What's going on, wrestling family? Welcome back to the channel. So we're going to react to 10 WWE moments that were retconned. Now, the funny thing about this is this happens more often than we think, but also WWE likes to do this and pretend like we didn't just see what happened in the storyline prior to the retcon. Like, we shouldn't be confused about this, but I guess they go by the formula of, okay, we're going to change the story right in front of y'all face. What are you going to do about it? And ever since I've been watching wrestling, my response has been this every single time. I'm gonna complain, but I'm gonna keep watching the product. And I guess that makes me weak-willed, but it is what it is. But anyway, before we get started, guys, please do me a favor, hit that like and subscribe button. Let's get into it.
I'm missing you a challenge.
Now, it's not out of the question for WWE just to completely ignore a major storyline. Over the years, WWE have insulted the viewer's intelligence to such a degree where it's turned fans away from the product. Join us now as WrestleMania looks at 10 insane WWE story retcons. Be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell for daily wrestling videos. Number 10, The Undertaker vs. Triple H at WrestleMania 17. WWE's decision to have The Undertaker face Triple H at WrestleMania 27 went down well with the audience, and it was seen by many as the next logical rivalry for the dead man. Whilst the feud to the matchup had some fantastic moments, it was kind of bizarre that WWE just failed to mention that The Undertaker and Triple H had wrestled at WrestleMania before, specifically WrestleMania 17, 10 years prior. WWE decided to just outright ignore this during the build, and it wasn't alluded to a single time during a promo segment or even on commentary. WWE were likely under the impression that this added to the mystique of the match. Acting like WrestleMania 27 was their first WrestleMania matchup would somehow make the match more interesting. Number 9.
I mean, and still to this day, I am kind of confused about why they didn't mention it. Like, I guess they probably believe that a lot of people wouldn't remember it because WrestleMania 17 is synonymous to Stone Cold Steve Austin versus The Rock and the My Way video package, which was amazing. Still to this day, I watch this every time I get. But I don't get why they did that. Now, the build-up to 27 was better than the build-up to 17. I think 17's match was a little bit better between Taker and Triple H, but that's neither here nor there. But I don't understand why they didn't mention it, because it's not like, you know, if they wanted to go the road and say, oh, we don't want people to see Triple H lose to the Taker twice, but you let Shawn Michaels do that back to back. So I don't understand that part of it, but maybe making it feel like it's a fresh match makes it seem bigger. I don't know. I don't get it. Let me know what y'all thought about that.
Logan Paul and John Cena are enemies? The WWE decided to have Logan Paul involved in a number of John Cena's final matches in 2025. Naturally, this has led to significant criticism from fans. During Cena's infamous heel run, WWE would have Logan and Cena team up, and it was presented as if the two were friends on screen. However, when Cena turned back to being a babyface, the two were now suddenly enemies. Both had personal issues with each other. Wrestlers hating each other just because one is a heel and one is a face is incredibly weak storytelling, and unfortunately, WWE relies on this far too often. Number 8, Sell Your Soul. Now, speaking of John Cena's heel run, one of the central elements of the entire arc was The Rock. The Rock would initially try to get Cody Rhodes to sell his soul, but after he refused, Plan B would be John Cena. At the 2025 Elimination Chamber PLE, Cena would turn to the dark side, and he would in essence become The Rock's corporate puppet. This was incredibly exciting as a viewer. How were The Rock and Cena going to interact on WWE television? How was Cena going to be presented as the corporate sellout? Well, just shortly after the Chamber PLE, The Rock decided he was just done with WWE's creative direction, and he felt like he wasn't needed in the storyline. This was completely baffling, as removing the catalyst for the entire heel run left WWE in the dark, and they had to scramble to justify the reason for the heel turn. The Rock would be barely mentioned in any capacity during Cena's heel run, and Cena had to go down the typical "you booed me" route, despite the fans not booing him for a number of years. It was horrendous, and unfortunately, all the blame falls directly on The Rock. Number 7.
I ain't gonna lie to you though. I would give, of course, a lot of the blame to The Rock, for sure. But I would give a lot of the blame to Triple H and WWE too. Because remember, Ariel Helwani, he pretty much told us that they brought the Rock back for Elimination Chamber to help out the ticket sales. And I felt like they didn't have a storyline to justify him being there. So I personally feel like, this is my conspiracy theory, I feel like they shoehorned him into that final segment with John Cena turning heel because they had nothing else to put him into during the show. And the problem with that is, I believe, I have nothing to support this, that WWE did not secure any type of contract that would suggest The Rock was going to be there for the long run. I think they didn't. And if they didn't do that, I think that's what screwed the whole thing up. Maybe The Rock had prior engagements before they asked him to come out to Elimination Chamber with no wherewithal that they wanted him for a longer storyline. And that is what I think caused the whole WrestleMania situation to happen and really put a big hole that we cannot forget in this heel turn from John Cena. It really messed things up a lot. So I'm going to give a fault to The Rock, but I'll also give the fault to Triple H and WWE because I think they should have figured this whole thing out before they did it like a desperate move to sell more tickets at Elimination Chamber.
Ron Killings. R-Truth is one of the most beloved wrestlers of all time, and it's extremely hard to find a single name on the planet that has a bad word to say about him. Therefore, when WWE cut Truth from his contract, fans were furious and talent weren't best pleased with WWE's actions. They would bring Truth back in a main event angle and he would ditch the comedic character for a more serious and legitimate presentation. The Truth name would also be gone and Truth would now be known by his real name, Ron Killings. But just weeks into this big return, Truth would be back to his comedic ways, and in the backstage segment with John Cena, the entire thing would just be played off for laughs, making it a complete waste of everyone's time. Truth's serious side could have been a fantastic addition to the roster, but WWE just couldn't resist reverting Truth back to his old ways. Number 6, John Cena is a babyface.
Made no sense.
On the road to SummerSlam 2025, WWE realized that John Cena's heel run had completely bombed, so they decided to pivot. Randomly on an episode of SmackDown, Cena would realize the error of his ways, and he would even share a beer with Cody Rhodes in the middle of the ring.
Yo, we got 3 of them back to back that happened in the same year, bro. This is crazy.
After this moment, there was no looking back for WWE. The old John Cena would be back with his old presentation, and the motives for him turning heel in the first place were basically retconned out of existence. The only reference to the heel run were in passing or with Cena interacting with a young fan, a fan he scolded during one of his villainous promos. It's really rare for WWE to pivot like this, but some of the most substantial pivots in WWE history have occurred in the past 2 years, which perhaps speaks to the nature of WWE's creative. Number 5.
No, but not that bad. And I think The Rock, the whole situation with The Rock, really put them in a place where they're like, we don't know what to do with this heel John Cena. Because we really can't even justify anything. And The Rock was supposed to be the catalyst for all of this. So they were like, you know what? We only got so much time left on this retirement run for John Cena, so we got to turn him babyface. That's the only way we can save this. And him being babyface absolutely made that match between him and Cody Rhodes what it was. Because remember, when he was a heel, he was a person who was trying to ruin wrestling, which is the reason why we got that match at WrestleMania. But even with me saying all of that, it don't justify none of that, bro. That is some terrible, terrible writing, bro. You gotta have stuff planned out and locked in before you start doing stuff like this, because you are disrespecting the people paying for the product, people who pay to go there in person to watch this stuff. You cannot do this to people. But you know what? WWE just gonna do what they want to do. That it is what it is. And if you haven't figured that out now, you're gonna get hurt.
Rollins and Roman Reigns make amends.
Yeah.
One of the ongoing story arcs of the Triple H era has focused on the issues between Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns. In the storyline, it is presented as if the two have been bitter enemies since Rollins disbanded the Shield faction back in 2014. But this is a major retcon. WWE are failing to address the numerous Shield reunions over the years, and even the fact that Rollins and Reigns were on good terms just 2 years after the initial breakup. Why would WWE book the storyline in this way? Well, the simple answer is that addressing the fact that the two were friends post-Shield breakup may have been seen as too confusing. Retconning the post-2014 reunions out of existence keeps the integrity of the 2014 breakup intact and creates an image that the two have been mortal enemies since that time. The WWE likes to act that Reigns is traumatized by a dreaded steel chair, the steel chair that Rollins used to disband the Shield group, but this is a relatively new story beat that was only added into the lore a number of years ago. Number 4,
but remember, like I think it was 2017, the Roman said to Seth Rollins, he was like, I wanted to forgive you, but I can't. He said something like that, which referred to when Seth Rollins brought up the chair shot situation. So I mean, it is all over the place. I just looked at the whole Shield reunion moments as if they're just like this non-canon moments just to appease the fans. But even if I look at it that way, it still doesn't justify. I mean, we saw what we saw, so we can't pretend like we didn't see it. And if WWE doesn't verbalize that this is a non-canon situation, which it shouldn't be the case. I mean, there shouldn't be no non-canon stuff happening in WWE. It's one singular storyline. But at least attempt to do something. They don't. They just like, it happened so long ago. I'm sure a majority of the people watching it now don't remember those moments, but the problem is we remember, bro. Especially with the Shield, we remember the Shield.
NXT title is a world title. Now in 2020, around WrestleMania season, WWE decided that the NXT title was going to be presented as a world title on par with the two respective titles on Raw and SmackDown. This caused some controversy at the time, as it hasn't been mentioned prior, and the only reason for this new rule was because Charlotte Flair was challenging for the NXT Women's title at WrestleMania 36, and as the Royal Rumble winner, they had to pretend like it was a legitimate world title. Whilst it certainly made the match feel like a big deal, it opened up a big can of worms, as WWE were now saying that all the lineage of former champions counted as world champions, but this wasn't actively mentioned on TV. For instance, when Shinsuke Nakamura would wrestle on the main roster, he wouldn't be labeled and promoted as a former world champion, so it was confusing as to what WWE were executing. The entire phase was retconned when WWE introduced the NXT 2.0 brand, and WWE decided that the NXT titles were definitely not world titles. Around 2021, the titles would never be referenced as world titles ever again, which was a right move as NXT was a developmental brand, and acting like their two top titles were on par with the WWE titles was just nonsensical. Number 3.
Yeah, I agree. And here's the thing. I remember at that time, they were really trying to force, even though it doesn't make any sense, like they said that NXT was a developmental brand, or still is, they were really trying to force NXT as the third major brand. They really were trying to do that. You know, I feel like one of the main reasons why we got Survivor Series in 2019 that I went to, that we had NXT versus SmackDown versus Raw, I think they were really trying to force the issue of NXT being considered a third brand. And I think they finally woke up like, you know, it's not on the level of SmackDown or Raw, which technically it isn't, but at the time it was definitely the better show between the three.
The ECW title is a world title. Now, the NXT title isn't the only title which went through a brief period of being recognized as a world title. When WWE relaunched the ECW brand
no, I hate this title, bro. I hate what they did to the ECW title.
2006, the ECW title was officially called the ECW World title. Now, this made sense as it has names such as The Big Show and Rob Van Dam competing for the gold. However, when names such as Johnny Nitro, Vince McMahon and Chavo Guerrero began to win the title, it quickly dawned on fans that there was no way WWE could legitimately be saying that this was equal to the two other world titles. In 2007, The Undertaker would get the opportunity to pick his WrestleMania opponent following his Royal Rumble win, and he could pick between the WWE title, the World title, and the ECW World title. At the time, the ECW World title was held by Bobby Lashley, and Lashley didn't feel remotely out of place standing side by side with Batista and John Cena. However, just a few months after this, WWE decided to deliver a major retcon. They would decide that the ECW World title was no longer going to be considered a world title. And this was confirmed when reigning champion Chavo Guerrero would enter the 2008 Royal Rumble.
It was confirmed even more when Mark Henry got the title and they turned it silver.
The right move from
Never
WWE,
forget him for that.
as the names that were holding that title would become increasingly more questionable as the years went on. Number 2, Triple H and Stephanie McMahon's divorce. The lore and continuity surrounding Triple H and Stephanie McMahon on TV is hard to grasp. The two in kayfabe became an item in 1999, and then in 2002, they divorced. However, fast forward to 2009, they were once again married, and it was implied that the two had never had any issues. The two had been committed to each other for a long time. This all surfaced during the Randy Orton vs. McMahon family storyline. This wasn't the only thing that was retconned, as any prior bad blood between Triple H and Vince McMahon was also erased. Triple H was part of the story. As McMahon's son-in-law. However, during the 2006, 2007, and 2008 rivalry, they feuded for 3 years, this relationship was never directly cemented to the audience. And number 1, The Rock and Cody Rhodes fiasco.
Fourth one in the same year, man.
The Rock and Cody Rhodes is so hard to dissect because it has numerous retcons and pivots that made it difficult to follow as fans. The first issues between the two surfaced in 2024 when Cody Rhodes gave up his WrestleMania spot so The Rock could wrestle Roman Reigns. It really wasn't exactly made clear why Rhodes gave up his spot. However, due to the fan backlash, WWE were forced to pivot, and they would go back to Rhodes versus Reigns. Due to this, issues between The Rock and Rhodes came to the forefront, and the two engaged in a heated blood feud on the road to WrestleMania 40.
By the way, he did a good job in the Smashing Machine. I just want to put that out there.
After WrestleMania 40, the two engaged in a title swap ceremony in one of the most awkward and forced segments ever seen on WWE television. Rhodes wasn't angry at The Rock, despite him making his life a living hell over the past few weeks. Rhodes just seemed to go along with what was unfolding. And then at Bad Blood in October 2024, The Rock would confront Rhodes along with Roman Reigns to close out the show, and it looked like he was teasing a future matchup by holding up his fingers in the entranceway. The Rock would counter 3 using John Cena's signature hand gesture and made a throat slash gesture before leaving. Now The Rock would speak on this signal saying it meant something. I'm a long gamer. At Bad Blood, it was a pay-per-view that The Rock attended, and I just did a very small subtle thing. There was a lot of criticism like, oh, it didn't mean anything. Well, it did. It's okay if you're not thinking about it now, but trust me when I say this, we are thinking about this stuff. We are long gaming this. Now, it turned out that signal meant...
So, are they going to try to force this to mean something? Because I remember WWE doing this a lot with a lot of stuff, where they'll do stuff, and they'll leave it alone, and then I feel like in the future, they'll be like, oh, remember like a couple years ago, we did X, Y, and Z? Almost like, remember down when Braun Breaker was still in NXT 2.0, and he was in a locker room speaking to Ava and to Paul Heyman. Right? Remember that whole situation happened? And then now they go back and, now they have him a part of the Vision, which Paul Heyman is the manager of, or the Oracle or whatever. So I feel like they do certain things like that. So if this is the case that WWE does this a lot, does this mean, and this is probably just me assuming stuff, and maybe this will not happen, will The Rock be John Cena's final opponent? Could that be the case? Could The Rock do this to make up for that moment? Because I already told people, like, hey, if his movie, The Smashing Machine, doesn't do great, he's going to come back to WWE. He does that every single time. So The Smashing Machine isn't doing that great in the box office right now. So, to kind of sustain his image, will The Rock come back and just kind of bring back the final boss and have the whole situation complete where John Cena, hopefully, without the involvement of Travis Scott. We don't need Travis Scott back again. We're done with that. But anyway, let's move on.
Absolutely nothing. The Rock was simply there at Bad Blood to make a moment. Nothing else. There was no long-term plan at all. In fact, things got even stranger in January at the Raw Netflix premiere, and The Rock explained that he and Rhodes had now become close personal friends, and they even hugged. There was absolutely zero explanation as to what had happened in between that time. How did they become best friends again? All they did was present Rhodes as a complete idiot.
You are not going to molest me on national TV, tell me you want my soul, and try to seduce me with some Terramana, and think I'm just going to be okay with that? Nah, bro. Nah, we fighting for life.
How could Rhodes forgive The Rock for treating him in such a way? It was one of the most baffling storylines ever. But there you have it, folks. 10 insane WWE story, right?
It's crazy that 4 of those all happened this year. And this year is not even over. That's the funny part. Which is kind of sad because it may be more of this could happen. But we got 2 months left. But yeah, anyway, which one was the worst retcon you could think of? Is there any retcons that did not make this list that you think is worse than any of them on this list? Let me know in the comment section. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you for your patience and thank you for supporting me. I appreciate each and every one of you guys. I hope you guys have an amazing day. See you tonight for Monday Night Raw live stream with the Flex Zone podcast as we do every Monday. Raw will be back at a normal time. Thank you all for everything. Salute. Peace. Have an amazing day.